Hello, and you're very welcome to another edition of the JMA podcast. I'm John Mann, and of course, this podcast is brought to you by orgoretro.com and Atak Sports. Use my promo code JMA podcast to get 15% off on orgoretro.com and get the best skins, gloves, and equipment on attack.ie. Be attack minded. And today, I'm joined by Daniel Hussey from Tackling Sport and Paul Shaughnessy from the Backdoor GA podcast. So I'll start off with my old comrade Paul. How are you keeping?
All good now, John. Looking forward to what should be another classic this weekend between Dublin and Mayo.
100%. And how are you keeping, Daniel? How's all the fame after Ireland AM?
Yeah, no, it's going well. Really looking forward to Dublin Mayo now, to be fair. I've got a ticket for the Hill, so I know they're opening Hill 16 for the Dubs, so which we can get into later if you want. But I'm really looking forward to getting back on the Hill in Croke Park and just a small bit of normality back, and hopefully be an amazing game as well.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And today we are here to preview the Dublin Mayo game this weekend, the All-Ireland semi-final at 6 p.m. at Croke Park on Saturday. And of course, the Tyrone and Kerry game is still up in the air. It's not obviously going to take place this weekend, and hopefully next weekend if Tyrone can get well by it. But of course, we're going to look forward to this weekend's game, and I'll start off with yourself, Daniel. Dublin Mayo, this game rings a bell.
It does indeed. If you go through the clashes ever since, well, obviously there's the 2006 one, but really from 2012 onwards, it's just been an incredible rivalry. Off the top of my head, 2012 is the semi-final, Mayo won, and 2013 then the Dubs beat Mayo by a point. The 2015, of course, was the semi-final replay, which the Dubs won in that brilliant last 20-minute spell. And then there was the 2016 and 17 All-Ireland finals, and then you also had, of course, the 2019 semi-final and then the 2020 final. So it's been an incredible rivalry, and it's probably unrivaled in the sport. In any sport, I don't think in any sport you'd have such a close rivalry over the period of, what do we say, they're nearly 10 years, so many close games, and yet Mayo haven't managed to win one of those games in the championship. It's just absolutely incredible how they haven't managed to get over the line, and they get harshly treated in a lot of quarters. I think they came up against a phenomenal Dublin team, and a lot of years where certain other counties were nowhere near them, and yet Mayo, no matter where they were, managed to raise their game against the Dubs. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for competing with Dublin all those years. They're due a win. If they had a Killian O'Connor there, you'd be looking at them, really a lot closer in the bet. And it's just whether, even though Dublin are in such poor form at the moment, relatively compared to other years, you're just looking at it going, do Mayo have enough firepower there to outscore the Dubs? It's hard to know. It'd be hopefully another classic. I think it will be another classic, but it'd be a different sort of game in the sense that, Dublin aren't as strong this year, and Mayo are a little bit different this year, considering obviously they're missing Keegan O'Connor, and that second half burst against Galway, they probably haven't done a performance like that in a while. So it'll be very interesting, James Horan's second year to do it, but I'm massively looking forward to the game. And like you said, Dublin Mayo, that rivalry, it's just an incredible rivalry that I think Mayo deserve a lot of credit for competing with Dublin, and hopefully they can get over the line at some point.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We're hoping for a belter this Saturday. What about yourself, Paul? We're coming down to the real neck and neck in the championship. As we're saying off air, there's less games now. We're down to the semi-final end of things, and we're not sure about the other semi-final. It hasn't really been confirmed it's going to play yet. So, but still, we've a game to look forward to. Dublin Mayo, Paul, this Saturday.
Yeah, there's obviously going to be a bit of a break now, longer for these teams. So it will be interesting to see how they do get on after. But as Daniel mentioned there, the games have been unbelievable, and your hand to be on your chest nearly if you're a Mayo supporter. You just think of 2 own goals against Dublin, Donny Vaughan getting sent off. It's just something that's always let them down. But yeah, no, Dublin's a huge challenge. I know people are saying that maybe they're going under the radar, but when you look at it, they lost something like 80 All-Ireland medals from their squad. Any team who loses that amount of All-Ireland medals are going to struggle. But then people are saying they're struggling. For the majority of the Leinster Championship, they didn't have Owen Merchant, John Small and Robbie McDade. That's your full half-back line. In today's game, they start the counter-attacks. And we've seen Merchant get back for the Leinster final, seen John Small get 40 minutes. Not sure about Robbie McDade, but I don't know. I think they still have that depth, and I don't know, they could spring a surprise, I think, this weekend and maybe start one of the Basquels.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I suppose, Daniel, Dublin so far, obviously we'll touch on Mayo now in a few minutes in the Connacht Championship, but Dublin in the Leinster Championship have obviously not been probably convincing, and a lot of people saying they've been undercooked. They haven't played overly well against the likes of Meath and Kildare, probably in second, third gear. But, Dublin have been at the top for the last couple of years, Daniel. It's not the worst thing to have a few off this.
Yeah, like it's just Dublin's incredible high standards. It's amazing when you think that this has never happened before, really, like a championship since the Jim Gavin days, where Dublin have looked so lackluster in games but won it by 8 or 9 points. You'd expect that over a period of time there might have been a couple of those performances, but it's just, I think it's Dublin's consistency at beating teams. Like, I think the handicap's a great barometer. So if they're 15-point favourites against a Wicklow, for example, they'll win it by 15 or 16. It's that ruthlessness, the way they just get up for every game as if it's an All-Ireland final. And that's obviously been missing this year under Dessie Farrell. Now, there's obviously been a lot of rumours in the camp and different sort of stories and stuff like that. So it's definitely not been a plain sailing at all. And the fact that Dublin have, again, they've had that, the absence of the All-Ireland medals, like Paul was saying, you've also got Stephen Clucks in that issue there. Like, I think the average is 116 per game in the Leinster Championship, which again is fine for Dublin if they're doing it, and they were just kind of easing off, but they've never done this before. So it's definitely a worrying trend, that side of things. Now, I know people are saying that Dublin might peak for an All-Ireland semi-final and final, and that's fine, but I don't know, there's just something not sitting right with me in terms of that team. And I guess if you look in hindsight back at last year's All-Ireland final, or All-Ireland series, I guess they were probably gifted it because, no disrespect, John, now, but Cavan coming through Ulster gave them a massive opportunity there, and before you knew it, they had Mayo under James Horan's first year, who they were saying, like, we're not really expected to get an All-Ireland final, so they kind of handed one. They also had that COVID break, which I think helped them, and I don't know, it just hasn't seemed to happen. And someone, Paul, said that maybe one of the Pascal brothers has started. If you look back at Dublin maybe the last few years, there might, if you had one maybe qualm about it, maybe they haven't been introducing the likes of the Pascal brothers a little bit sooner and giving them more game time in the championship. Maybe last year, maybe Jim Gavin was focused on the 5 in a row in 2019. And I know Dessie has tried last year in like bringing Robin McDade through, like dropping Brian Howard, for example, in the All-Ireland final, as well as Paul Mannion, but I think that maybe Dublin took their eye off the ball a small bit in player development, going for that 5 in a row. Where now, like, if you do throw in one of the Pascal brothers, who I think would be well up for it, they haven't that experience of starting a championship game in the red hot battle. So I'd have serious concerns about what Dublin are going to do, what team they're going to play, and if they do start again one of the Pascal brothers, like, you're looking at them going, can they deliver? They haven't really been proven, albeit they're very impressive in those last couple of minutes against Kildare. So yeah, I'd have major concerns with Dublin. I think people aren't overreacting. I think it's fair to say, based on their performance in previous seasons, Dublin aren't near as good enough, and Kerry are probably deserving All-Ireland favourites. It's just a question, can Mayo get through and capitalise on this sloppiness which has gone to Dublin's game? Like Costello's scored 110 from play. In the championship, he's kind of been a bit hit and miss. Kieran Kilkenny's done well in the sense that he's, I think he's got 9 from play, but he's also hit a lot of bad wides as well. So I don't know. It'd be interesting. And just on Mayo, imagine Mayo do manage to beat the Dublin Brigade finally after years and years this Saturday, only to lose to Kerry in an All-Ireland final. It would be pretty typical Mayo, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely, Daniel. It would be very, very Mayo-like to do that. And I suppose, Paul, even on that, obviously you've been keeping a good eye on Dublin in the Leinster Championship as well. Do you feel they've been undercooked? Has this been the Dublin of the years gone by? What are they lacking at the minute? We've seen the likes of maybe Brian Fenton, Colin O'Callaghan being a bit lacklustre, and I think I've seen a lot of boys saying that maybe Dublin, they're a bit tired of the competition. They're getting a bit, bored of it nearly. So, Paul, what would be your whole take on it, really?
Yeah, for Dublin, especially up front, their shot selection, it's not something you see, like just rushing shots in front of goal when there's no need to whatsoever at all. Because under Jim Gavin, you would have seen them work it in, come around the loop, and really inside that 21. But you've seen Conor O'Callaghan kicking the ball into Mark Donlan's hands. That's not something you do see with this Dublin team. But yeah, as Daniel was talking there about the Pascals, I just think when you look at that Dublin bench at the minute, you're not seeing the names of Paddy Andrews or something, and that's why I feel Paddy Small could be held in reserve this weekend. If a game's in the melting pot, last 15 minutes, they're going to want to bring on that explosiveness. Like Dean Rock didn't look happy the last day when he was taken off, and that's something you don't really see with this Dublin team. He definitely has to start just for his free taking. Costello's in the form of his life, and if he backs up another performance, he could be in the running for Footballer of the Year this year. So I just don't see him being dropped. But yeah, I think Paddy Small could be held in reserve. Like, it's hard to know where they're at because of the Leinster Championship. The first half against Meath, they looked excellent. Then second half didn't look great. Kildare had a lot of misses. Definitely will know more this weekend, but I'd even be intrigued to see where James McCarthy plays this weekend, because I think he could be a player who might follow Aidan O'Shea this weekend.
Just on what Paul said there, I think it's a really interesting point, because if you look at, say, the hurling over the weekend and Shane Kingston, I thought a big part of Cork winning that game was having Shane Kingston in reserve, and if they are to beat Limerick, I would drop Shane Kingston and Alan Cadigan and keep them in reserve again and keep Limerick within 3 or 4 points, and then you have a bench to win it. And I think if you the Baskell brothers coming on, there's not that same spark then if one of the Baskell brothers starts and then you bring on a Paddy Small. Like Paul said, I actually fully agree with him there, that you have that bit of excitement, that bit off the bench, because Eamon Fitzmaurice made the point in the Sunday game, that Dublin bench on paper is just not, it doesn't frighten teams anymore. But if you hold a Paddy Small, or even if you decide, I'm not going to start Dean Rock, and you have someone like him or that calibre to come off the bench, I think it's better than, going with a similar team, and then you're relying on, again, the Baskell brothers, who haven't had that experience in championship football as much as other Dublin subs in the past. So
yeah, no, it's definitely like in the GA, like hurling or football, it's just teams are finishing stronger than they start these days, just with the way the game's gone.
100%. And it's interesting you referenced the bench as well, lads. Obviously, with Dublin not being overly strong compared to over the years, and I see Kevin McManaman's back from his travels from Japan as well, so he's obviously back. But it'll be interesting to see does Desi call him back in. So, at the end of the day, a lot of managers always reference the fact you need a 23 man squad. Dublin's bench doesn't seem to really be as strong as over the years in recent years. So, Daniel, do you feel if they do get to the All-Ireland final, or even this Saturday, Dublin's bench will need to be called upon?
Yeah, it definitely will on the Saturday. I see no way that this game won't be going down to the last 10 minutes. I just think that second half performance from Mayo against Galway, I was really impressed with them, because I actually gone into the game, I'll be honest, and sometimes when you don't have it on record, you pretend your predictions was different, but I quietly fancied Galway to beat that Mayo team. I just thought Portjoy's, with that bit of experience, they had more games in the league as well, more competitive games, and with Mayo being in Division 2, and at half time I was like, yeah, Galway have these. But obviously, looking back in hindsight, I think in that first half, a lot of it came down to Mayo's sloppiness as opposed to Galway's good play. And obviously Shane Walsh got the goal, but it came off the post. Little things like that didn't go their way. So everything went wrong in that first half. They were 5 points down or whatever. And the way they dug that out second half, the pace they ran, Aidan O'Shea's reaction when they won the penalty was amazing. I was so impressed. The running game, but they're mixing with a bit of kickball as well. And not that they play better with Killian O'Connor, but there was a small bit more freedom in the forwards. I guess they weren't always looking for a Killian O'Connor. There's like Matthew Ryan running through. They had loads of options on the ball. I thought, again, Aidan O'Shea was immense. So I just can't see, no matter how bad, like Mayo, like you mentioned, Paul, some of the situations Mayo have got into lose to Dublin. But remember some of the starts of the game, didn't they? Give Dublin 2 own goals head start in an All-Ireland final and end up drawing the game in 2016. They've gifted Dublin early goals. Conor Callan scored an early goal against Mayo. It doesn't really matter if Mayo are 4 or 5 points down in a early on, because they know they can get themselves back into the game. They nearly play better almost if they have that bit of freedom. So I can't see any way that it won't get into the last 10 minutes. I think this game is going to go right to the wire, to be honest with you. I think it'll be a point either way. So Dublin will 100% will have to rely on that bench, and I'm a big believer, and Jim Gavin was definitely a big believer in holding players in reserve, and I think Desi's got to look at that, and he's got to find his super sub, and if that is a Kevin McMenamin or someone else with a little bit more experience. I know their numbers are more limited than it was under Jim Gavin. Jim definitely had the more options, but Desi's got to find the right team where, with 5 minutes to go, his best side is on the pitch as opposed to the first 5 minutes,
100%. And I suppose, Paul, looking at it, Phil McMahon was saying during the week that he's embracing a new period with the Dubs, and obviously probably being that maybe last 15-minute man for Dublin, Paul. So how important will Phil McMahon and some of the kind of elder gentlemen of the Dublin team be to them to maybe get their hands on that All-Ireland title again this weekend and the following weeks after that, Paul?
Yeah, no, it'd actually be interesting with Philly McMahon because I know he's involved with Bohemians in the background this year, and they're obviously playing in the qualifying for the European Conference League. But yeah, no, they obviously play a huge role. I think Kevin McMahon back could actually be a huge role because he is a psychologist, and a lot of Dublin players have talked about how Kevin McMahon would do a lot of these psychologist things before the games. But no, like all them players who have won All Irelands, they've been around the block, they know what's happening. But like if you're just looking at the game as a whole, like if Mayo don't push up in the kick out, I can't see them winning this game. Like you have to be brave and you've just got to go for it. Like Kildare gave Dublin the ball, and maybe this Dublin team aren't as ruthless at the minute, but I still think if you give them that ball in the cornerback line, there's a high chance that you're nearly giving that score away.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I suppose, as I was asking Daniel Paul as well, how much of an impact will Dublin's bench have in this game, and even if they do get to the All-Ireland final? Because, you know, a bench is so important. It is a 23 man game these days, Paul. So, you know, Dublin's bench, there would be a lot of relying on it, especially playing against Mayo. They will need to have their full deck of cards.
Yeah, no, it'd definitely be interesting. I'd say all Dublin supporters are really hoping kind of Sean Bugler to push on. He had a good year last year, maybe just struggled early on the All Ireland, but like if they can get him back to bring in for a Scully, maybe Howard has been playing at 6, but I maybe expect him this weekend to push up to that wing forward position where we've seen him. Midfield, then you're looking at probably Lahif or Pazar or Coffey, but I don't think the strength is there at midfield at the minute. Like, as we mentioned, Paddy Small could be held in reserve. So like, yeah, the bench is going to be key, but it's definitely not what it was. And as we talked about, like Kevin McMahon, it's definitely going to be interesting. But really, I couldn't see him getting a jersey this weekend. It would cause maybe a bit of friction in the camp if Kevin McMahon walks back in, hasn't been training in a few months, and he gets a jersey ahead of someone else.
Yeah, 100%. And I suppose, Daniel, we've seen in recent weeks Evan Comerford doing a sterling job against Meath, Kildare and the likes, and he's done quite well, and he really hasn't had any hiccups because obviously the men in front of him is as good, if not better, than some of the players gone by. But, you know, Stephen Cluxton, we have to talk about him. He's the elephant in the room the last couple of weeks and months, and I suppose it's hammer time now, Daniel. Massive game on Saturday, potential massive game after that as well. You know, it's all right maybe using everything in Leinster Championship games, but at the end of the day, to win an All-Ireland, you will need the best of the best.
Yeah, and on the kick-out side of things, I think Kildare conceded every single kick-out to Evan Comerford. So I guess on the Leinster Championship side of things, you're right. Like, Evan's big test will be these All-Ireland semi-finals and finals. Like, personally, I think he's a really capable keeper, and his kick-outs will do unbelievable. But like, Stephen Cluxton's the greatest player, one of the greatest players to ever play Gaelic football, let alone goalkeeper. So, and even if you look at him, even he's had the odd meltdown as well. So it's how Evan Comerford reacts, because there will be a bad kick out in the game. Like, I played a bit of goalkeeping back in the day, still do a small bit. So there's always a bad kick out. There's always a call that goes wrong. That's not the issue. It's the second mistake or the third mistake that teams start building and start putting pressure on. So it's a massive game for Evan Comerford. Like, and yeah, he hasn't really had that test of an All-Ireland, you know, semi-final, final with him being the number one. No Stephen Cluxton involved side of things, but it'll be interesting what Mayo do in the kickouts. Will they kind of, you know, it's very hard to pressurize kickouts for 70 minutes. Will they, you know, do a bit of zone, or will they push up on the kickouts? Will they kind of drop off? I think they've got to go in waves, and maybe after a free kick, kind of press the kickouts and decide the next 5 kickouts we're going to press, and if it's not working, drop off. But I'm really can't wait to be in the stadium and watching that kick out. And I think the best part of not watching on TV but actually being in the stadium is the kick outs, because I'm not going to go too off topic, but I know on TV companies they love showing replays of scores, and you miss the kick out and how did Aiden win that ball, why was a kick there in the first place. So that's the bit I'm looking forward to going in. But yeah, massive game for Evan Comerford, and I do think, again, he hasn't had the opportunities, and fair enough with Stephen Cluxton, but now will that come back to bite Dublin. I know he's had a lot of league games, but I guess in the big games, Stephen Cluxton's obviously played, so he's definitely inexperienced, and you won't know until he's in the cauldron of a Mayo fans going absolutely berserk at him in the stadium, whether he's got it or not.
100%. It just reminds me of the Monaghan Armagh game a few weeks ago. It was all action in Sky Sports, and there was that much happening. The cameraman couldn't keep up with himself. So it was, it's interesting that you referenced that, Daniel. And I suppose, Paul, obviously, Stephen Cluxton, he's not about at the minute. Rumour is he's playing a bit of five-a-side with the lads and having the crack at the minute. So what's the story with Cluxton, and how much pressure is on Mr. Comfort this weekend?
Huge pressure on Comfort, but I think anyways what people don't realise, Evan Comerford has been training and he's been Stephen Cluxton's apprentice, and he's going to pick up snippets, and Cluxton has obviously been giving him huge advice to be stepping into that position. It didn't really surprise me with the Stephen Cluxton situation. He was never a man for media or interviews or anything, and maybe he did step away in his own terms, but then in one way you'd have to think, was there a fallout with Dublin breaking that COVID breach between Dublin and the management? And I don't know, Daniel, it'd be interesting to get your views as a Dublin supporter.
Yeah, again, you're all going on hearsay, and I know as much as the next man, but you got to put two and two together, that between that and a few other stuff, that he definitely wasn't happy. And just for argument's sake, that was the case. Imagine Stephen Cluxton the Monday morning finding out about the COVID breach like everyone else. I'd say he would have been fuming, but we don't know that that's the case or not. But regardless, this would not have happened under Jim Gavin, because there would have been a small bit of chat going, if you are retiring, that's fine, let us know, or Jim would have just made the decision for him. Do you know what I mean? So, and Stephen, out of all players, deserves the space and time, and I think, as you know, the media and other people, we should obviously, he's fully entitled to his break. And you don't know what's going on in people's personal life as well, especially with COVID lockdown. A lot of things, it might be as simple as he's lost interest in it altogether, which is grand. I actually thought initially when it broke that he might come back, because it's only even now you've only got 3 weeks and you could win your 9th All-Ireland medal. It's mad that he isn't going for it at all. So I don't like speculating too much on it, but that something has gone on there, and it doesn't look good for Desi Farrell anyway, that management side of things. And I know Desi, and I've heard this from a lot of people, that he's a brilliant manager for players who buy into what he's doing, but I do know that if you're not 100% bought in, there is a bit of you kind of standoffish sort of thing, where those kind of rumours and those kind of stories weren't really heard under Jim Gavin at all. So
it's a pity as well, John, in one sense, that he didn't get to go out on his own terms and kind of play his last game in Croke Park, and the Dublin supporters to be there, because really as a keeper, I don't think he's got the credit he deserves to go down as one of the greatest ever goalkeepers that did play the game.
Yeah, no, 100%, and if it is the end of Cluxton, it may be a Cluxton way to go out, but I really do think it's nearly like Messi leaving Barcelona. He just had the press conference and off he goes, because I really think for the career that Cluxton did have, he transformed the game. So I hope it isn't the end of him. But again, experience is key to win titles, Paul. So it would be bad to have a win for this year, no?
Yeah, no, it definitely has affected the camp. And Dublin players obviously aren't going to come out in the media and speak out and say that Cluxton gone is having a huge effect, but it is, because he was such a leader, he was such a perfectionist, he wanted everything down to a T. Even last year after the All Ireland, I thought his interview was very good, where he said he doesn't like to celebrate out on the pitch in front of the opposition, because he's been in that situation, and that just shows the character of the man. But when you just look around, and there's players in their mid-20s like Conor Callan and all these players, and they have so many All-Irelands. There's just huge experience there at the minute. It's a blow in one sense, but I don't think it's going to be the difference this year between them not winning the All-Ireland.
Yeah, 100%. I suppose, Daniel, moving on to the Mayo end of things, they know all about playing Dublin. They've played them numerous times in All-Ireland final, and Jesus, if there was ever a year to potentially get over the Dubs, this potentially is the year. A lot of people have been saying, what can Mayo do this weekend? How much do they need to utilise the threat from maybe Ryan McDonough, the likes of Aidan O'Shea? I know Cillian O'Connor's missing, and I seen during the week Stephen Cohen was referencing the fact of Cillian O'Connor's impact of his injury, him not being about, so he's a massive loss. But surely that's a big enough incentive for Mayo to try and get a win this Saturday.
Yeah, and on the Killian O'Connor side of things, I think it's obviously a net loss in the sense that you'd rather have Killian O'Connor or not. But again, I do think Mayo, those forwards can play with a small bit more freedom, and there are some pluses to Killian O'Connor being there. Again, obviously overall it's a disaster for them, but the likes of, like you said, Ryan O'Donoghue, who can come into their own, like Matthew Moran, Conor Loftus, like I think they really stepped up in the second half against Galway, particularly Matthew Moran. I thought he was immense. I was particularly impressed with the back line, like Oisin Mullins' kind of like seamless transition to number 6 now. It's just immense, and he's really kind of grown in the role. Like people forget his first season was last season, Young Player of the Year. Like this will be his first time in a proper Pat Crow Park, I guess, is something to bear in mind because he hasn't been in that cauldron before. But I can see no issues at all, and I thought Pádraig O'Hara was brilliant at full back, and he'd probably be the man to pick up Cormac Costello, you would think. I know Paul said he's a potential Football of the Year, and I think on form he might probably be one of Dublin's, most dangerous attackers. So, and you've got Lee Keegan now, obviously playing cornerback due to probably not as attacking as he once was, those heights that he reached in the 2017 final in particular. But they've a lot of I'm impressed with how they've dealt with the retirements, Mayo, and it's not that it's been seamless, but they've managed to bring a lot of these young players in. Again, Oisin Mullin, Pádraig O'Hara is kind of a new enough addition, but they're definitely exciting. There's definitely a lot of players there that can cause Dublin problems. They still stick to that Mayo tradition of running the ball, but they're also able to mix it a bit more. And I do think there's a small bit more kicking in them in the forward line. And on the last point I'll make on the Aidan O'Shea side of things, I think they've really got to commit to playing in 14 for a long period of time, probably longer than they've ever played against Dublin, because I couldn't understand last year's All-Ireland final how little Aidan O'Shea played in the full forward line. From memory now, I think it was mainly in the second half, and half-time the game was pretty much dead, so I'd expect Aidan O'Shea to even start full forward just to get a bit of madness to the game, because Mayo are very good at madness. They're very good at I don't want to be too stereotypical, but they're very good at when the game's mental, the fans are roaring at the referee, they're roaring at Evan Comerford. So I think there's a massive opportunity missed if they don't throw Aidan O'Shea in very early at number 14 just to test him, and it'd be interesting on the Dublin side of things who goes on him. But if I was Mayo fan, I'd be very excited about Saturday, because I think last year it was too early for them, James Horan's year. I'd say this Mayo team will peak in the next 2 years, but this is a massive opportunity because I don't think Dublin will be as sloppy or as vulnerable in an All-Ireland semi-final again. So, like I said, I think Aidan O'Shea is probably the key there. If you get him in full forward early, bit of madness to the game, they can really have something to kind of get to the last 10 minutes again, and maybe have the impact off the bench that Dublin just don't have at the moment.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned Aidan O'Shea as well, Daniel. Mayo don't really know where to play him in the last couple of years. He could be full back, midfield, centre half forward, full forward. Obviously, Dublin full back line, pumping high balls in. Kildare got a lot of look at it over recent years, and a lot of teams have. So, is that a potential position for Aidan O'Shea? Full forward, get the ball into him. Matthew Moran's flying at the minute. He can even go inside sometimes. He can let the ball in. Conor Loftus. There is lots of chances. Mayo are cute enough.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, there's a lot of legs around in Aidan O'Shea. And I know people give Aidan O'Shea a hard time for his All-Ireland final record not scoring a point, but he set up that goal in 2017 with Lee Keegan bottom left in the Davin with a lovely little hand pass, and in that 11 role he is a playmaker where he's played mostly for Mayo, so he hasn't had the opportunity. It's not like he's been kicking 10 wides in these All-Ireland finals. And I think with a lot of more legs that Mayo seem to have in that forward line, they're not holding on to an Andy Moore anymore, and to a certain extent, not saying Cian O'Connor isn't legs, but when you have Cian O'Connor, he's already playing close to goal. So if you put Aidan O'Shea, your two best players are playing too close to goal. You don't have someone out there. Whereas now I think you can put Aidan O'Shea in 14 and have the other lads around on the legs like Matthew Moran, Conor Loftus, Diarmuid O'Connor. There's a lot of options there. So, and with Dublin the high ball, I couldn't understand with Kerry in the All-Ireland final replay how they kept pumping long balls into doing the right kind of balls in, but they were kicking it to Paul Ganey instead of Tommy Walsh, who was sitting on the bench, So this is a proper target man, and I don't think Dublin, even again, the second half was over, and I, from memory, a lot of the commentary was Aidan O'Shea didn't make that much impact in the full forward line against the Dubs, but I thought he did catch a couple of balls that he won his fair share anyway, and I do think there's if he plays 14 again from the start. And again, it's roam him around if needs be, but you have the legs. You don't need Aidan O'Shea anymore winning those kind of balls. Yes, if you're getting clean out of midfield, get him on Brian Fenton, maybe win a couple of kickouts over him. But by and large, you have Aidan O'Shea in there. Mayo have the legs around the pitch now, and he's not getting any younger as well. But I think the impact he makes in there, they have to really stick and commit to playing him there for maybe 2/3 of the game. But they've always seemed to be reluctant, and I know he played a small bit more this year, but they've always been reluctant. And I think with Keegan O'Connor being injured now, I do think there's no excuse for him not to put him 14 for a long period of time in this game.
Yeah, 100%, Paul, and even as Daniel was referencing there too, like Aidan O'Shea, is this the time to put him in full forward, not kind of have him all around the pitch, and is this the time to maybe stomp down Aidan O'Shea's position in this Mayo team? And is the Dublin game this weekend a good test for that, Paul?
Well, like going on the Connacht final, he created absolute havoc in that goal full back line. When they went in, they just couldn't handle him at all. But if you're playing him in there, it's no good pumping ball into him. He catches it and there's 2 or 3 Dublin lads around him, because that's what Dublin are excellent at. They don't afford themselves to be vulnerable because they will drop them numbers back. So if he's playing inside, you're going to nearly need Tommy Conroy and Ryan O'Donoghue in there with him, because like it's no good Aidan O'Shea getting the ball and there's 2 or 3 lads around him, because he wants to catch that, he wants to offload it and try and create that score. But the thing about Aidan O'Shea is, like, he struggled to get on the score sheet against Dublin in the past. As far as I know, I don't think he's scored in an All-Ireland final, which is a crazy stat when you think about it. But yeah, it's a huge game for Aidan O'Shea, considering Cillian O'Connor's gone. But like, for Mayo to have a chance, they have to be quick in the transition. They can't go lateral, they can't go sideways, and they're going to have to try and go direct to Aidan O'Shea. But he has to have the support in there, because if he doesn't have the support in there, Dublin are just going to turn it over.
Just one point on Mayo there before I forget, John. It's something that every time they seem to be on top of a game, it's not wides they kick, it's kicking the ball short into the goalkeeper's hand. And I'm not talking about the last couple of years. Well, I'm not talking about this year because I haven't had a chance to play the Dubs, but I don't know, like Paddy Durkin is so good at kicking a ball over the bar from like 35-40 metres out, but he's also very good at dropping a ball short into a keeper's hands. I think I remember an example in last year's All-Ireland final. There just always seems to be an occasion, and not just don't want to pick on Paddy Durkin because he's an incredible footballer, but they do the hard bit and then they just kicking the ball short, as we know in Gaelic football at any level of the game, all the way down to Division 11 in Dublin, is a no-go, and it just lifts the opposition, and particularly with crowds back as well, it'll just lift the Dublin fans there. So I think the sloppiness and that kind of thing, Mayo need to be ruthless and need to go for their scores, but be clever about it, be smart about it, make sure you're kicking wide balls so you have that Evan Comerford kick out and not two kicks later you're under the fence. So that bit of sloppiness, they need to get out of their game, particularly from the wing backs hitting the ball over the bar. That stuff, do not drop it short into Comerford's hand, because that's something to watch out for, because that's sometimes worth a 2-point swing. Or I've seen Dublin get a ball in the keeper's hand and 3 ball kicks it's in the back of the net, and that's 4-point swing. Like, you just can't afford that against the Dubs.
Oh yeah, 100%. You need to be 100% all guns blazing for them. And I suppose, Paul, looking at Mayo's Connacht Championship, obviously against Roscommon, and yourselves Galway in the final, but the Roscommon game, it was a very wet day, not great standard of football, and I suppose Mayo just really got over the line. Roscommon obviously parked the bus for large parts of the game. So I suppose, was the Connacht Championship good preparation for this game Saturday, Paul? And I suppose, looking at that Roscommon game, you know, it was a stern test, but they got through that test.
Yeah, I think you mean Galway and Roscommon. Mayo faced Sligo and Leitrim there.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Quarter and semi, yeah, but they got through them, and they didn't learn a whole pile about them. And I suppose they did have the COVID cases in between that, but yeah, they got through them. As Danny mentioned earlier on, like, everything really went wrong for Mayo, went wrong in that opening half, but like, their running game is going to be the key this weekend. Expect the 2 McLaughlins to start, because when they came on against Galway, they really did add to that running game. We've seen Owen McLaughlin last year, the pace he has, but the one kind of area that really impressed me this year with them is the younger players' condition. Oisin Mullen, Ryan O'Donoghue, Tommy Conroy, Owen McLaughlin. Like, Oisin Mullen is 2021. And he looks like a fully grown man. And I thought his hunger the last day against Galway, like, he was in Shane Walsh's face. He didn't want to give him an inch when he went on. That's just something. But like, Port Bahora as well. His tackle on the Connacht final, like, you hear a lot of managers saying to club teams, near hand. He goes with his fair hand and he turns the ball over. Like, that's an outstanding skill to be able to pull that off. Like we talked about Lee Keegan, I think the one big thing Mayo will learn from that Connacht final is Lee Keegan isn't the go-to man maker anymore, because he was in big trouble on Shane Walsh in that first half, and they did switch it around then. So I think they've kind of learned that Lee Keegan is still a vital cog in this team, but he's just not that go-to man maker anymore. So I'd nearly expect probably Lee Keegan to pick up someone maybe like Dean Rock this weekend rather than Conor Callahan or someone.
Yeah, 100%. And I suppose reflecting on the Connacht final, Mayo's last game, Daniel, what did you make for this? I suppose as a St. Paul, what is a good preparation for this game on Saturday? Mayo probably didn't get out of the traps really in the first half, but they really came good in the second half. Was that Galway game a good test for the mighty Dubs on Saturday?
Yeah, definitely a better test than anything Dublin have faced anyway. And the fact that Mayo went in 5 points down, they know that I know Dublin are a different opposition altogether, but if worst case scenario, Dublin will be 5 up at half time, that's probably the worst case in the first half. Mayo can not just point to other Dublin games, they can point to that Galway game, and everything went wrong. They made those few changes and it was almost an instant impact. Now you have to question the slowness of Joyce maybe changing the Galway side of things, but in fairness, I know Shane Walsh picked up an injury at half time or just before half time, so maybe a lot of things kind of went their way, but in fairness to Mayo, they dug it out well. And like I mentioned earlier, like Aidan O'Shea's reaction when they won that penalty, they kind of knew they were in business. And one of those weird games when it was like they're a point down or level, you just knew they were going to win. Like Galway just had nothing going forward in that second half. So it's massive preparation for them against, like, for Dublin, as good as you're going to get with this style of championship, you know what I mean? So you're facing another Division 1 side or a Division 1 side that Mayo will obviously be back there next year. But I think for the likes of Matthew Rowan, it was a big day, getting the goal, being able to be involved in a lot of the play. His running is phenomenal. He seems to have found that position now at number 8, and it'd be interesting how he gets on that midfield battle. But I thought there was a lot of plus for Mayo, and they definitely came out of the game better than they went into it anyway. And again, this Mayo team will keep improving. I think they're peaking for that 22-23 under James Horan. I'm a really big fan of his management style, and they were kick a ball against beating Kerry in that 2014 All-Ireland semi-final, but I think he is the right man for the job, and they're peaking there. And a game like that Galway game is perfect preparation for the Dubs. And whatever happens against Dublin on Saturday, if they're within 3 or 4 points, you'd be very hopeful for Mayo over the next couple of years that they can go again and go again. So great preparation, definitely. And the way everything went wrong that first half, and they still managed to dig it out.
100%. And we're after referencing some class players there: Matthew Moran, Conor Loftus, Oisin Mullen and Aidan O'Shea, Ryan O'Donoghue, all them lads. How big of performances will we need to see from them on Saturday, Daniel? Because obviously they've been very solid throughout. Matthew Moran was obviously man of the match against Galway, so them boys will need to be stepping up this weekend.
Yeah, I thought Matthew Ryan came of age, like I said, mentioned the goal and just that big performance in Croke Park. And that's something I probably should have mentioned earlier, that they managed to get a win in Croke Park. Normally you'd get to an All-Ireland semi-final, and Dublin have had 3 games in Croke Park, and you've battled Galway in the rain in Salt Hill, or it's always raining in Connacht for a Connacht final, which is like, I remember the Galway Roscommon game going, well, of course it's raining here. It's just a typical Galway Roscommon game. I've seen this game hundreds of times before.
Always rains in Galway, Paul.
Yeah, we never do have good weather down here.
It does Sunday at 2:00, which is usually the throw-ins for those Connacht semi-finals. But even the Galway Mayo final last year was lashing rain. So it was a nice change being in Croke Park, getting fans in the stadium, so they're used to that. But also just it wasn't absolutely lashing down, and it was good preparation. So yeah, it's a massive game for these Mayo players in terms of stepping up. Again, I think they're on a road in for, my only concern is, while this Dublin team are ready to be beat, I don't think Mayo are ready potentially to beat them, is my only concern. But the likes of, I think whatever happens, as long as they're putting in big performances, there's a lot of young players, like Paul mentioned that Oisin Mullen there, we've already mentioned him, he's been amazing. Matthew Rowan, as I said, there's a lot of real good talent. Dermot O'Connor seems to be getting a lot more time on the pitch as well. There's just a lot of really solid players in this Mayo team, and there's an exciting team to watch. And I think this is just another step in their journey, and if they're good enough to beat Dublin a day, then they will. But they've definitely a lot of exciting players, and it's time for them to just keep pushing that on. And I think James Horan's the right man to take that forward. One person will be interested in one position Mayo have never really sorted out Not that they haven't sorted out. Like David Clark's like one of the best goalkeepers or shot stoppers anyway in his last 15 years. I think he played against Dublin in 2006, but the kickouts, and again the kickouts work fine against kind of 90% of teams, but when you come up against Kerry and Killarney, David Clark was under massive pressure, or the Dubs and Croke Park. With Rob Henley, he has that ability to kick it, but he has that meltdown in him as well. So it's still Rob Henley in goal for Mayo. It'll be fascinating to see on Saturday how he holds up against the Dubs, because he has painful memories in Croke Park against the Dubs, as we know. Probably not helped by management decisions, throwing him in just before throwing and then our final replay. Another madness that Mayo try and do to self-sabotage themselves, but it'll be interesting how Dublin go on against Rob Henley, and if they give him pushed right up in the kickouts, and be fascinating battle there as well. But yeah, to answer your question, it's definitely an opportunity for a lot of these young players to just push through and get a win against Dublin in Croke Park.
100%. And what about your take on it, Paul? There's a lot of exciting players there, and a lot of players to cause this Dublin squad a lot of problems.
Yeah, there definitely is. And I think this weekend you're probably going to see Jeremy O'Connor and Matthew Ryan midfield. Jeremy O'Connor went on Fenton last year in the final, and he did curtail him, but I suppose he can only curtail Brian Fenton for so much. And Conor Loftus kind of did push into that 11 position against Galway, and he did hit some great scores. So I maybe expect him to stay at 11, and then the two McLaughlins to, I suppose, play that working wing forward role. And like as I mentioned already, O'Donoghue and Conor need to stay close to goal. It's going to be fascinating in one sense to see Ryan O'Donoghue kick frees under pressure, because Cillian O'Connor's gone. He didn't necessarily have to do it against Galway in the first half, and they kind of got their 2 goals, and the game was really over by them once they got them 2 goals, and he kind of had the freeze when Mayo had that momentum and they were coming in waves. But maybe a point in the game, it will be interesting to see how O'Donoghue gets on. But the thing about O'Donoghue is he looks hungry. He looked really hungry against Galway. I think he used to be a boxer as well, as far as I know, so nothing really seems to faze him. But personally, I think Tommy Conroy, when he looks back in the final last year, he was taken out of it really, and it's a huge learning curve for him. But I think if Mayo, that's one player that really need to look at getting a huge performance out of this weekend, because he has that raw bit of pace, bit similar to Conor O'Callaghan when he takes it on. He's a very hard player to stop. And the most fascinating battle is probably going to be, will Ryan pick up Fenton? It is hard to know, because both managements really want Fenton to play his own game and Ruan to play his own game. They're not going to want to stop Ruan and Fenton's game.
100%. It's interesting you mentioned O'Donoghue's boxing skills. He might need that at half time going into the dressing.
It'll be all Mayo causing that anyway. It won't be the Dubs.
Phil McMahon's he's very shy, Daniel, is he?
He's very shy. It's all Aidan O'Shea winding him up. That's all that is.
Dublin are not guilty at all and all that, but
27 All-Ireland final aside, when we just decided to pull everybody down, Jesus, I was like, what is going on? Paul Kimmage had a pop at us then, but
of course it is. He always has popped the top. And I suppose, Paul, we have to give this Mayo team a serious bit of credit. To keep coming back, to keep getting new players every single year. James Horan's a fighter. He keeps going at it year after year. He came back. He smelled a bit of blood. It's serious achievement and serious going from the Mayo gents, Paul.
Yeah, it pains me to say it as a Galway man, unfortunately. But to come back and to get these players through, because Mayo necessarily haven't been winning under 20/under 21 Connacht titles. Galway have really been the dominant force in Connacht, but to bring players through who haven't had success at underage level, that's where he has to be given massive credit. There's another lad now he's brought through this year. You might see him come on as Enda Hession, and he's naturally forward, and he's kind of turned him into a cornerback. He came on against Galway later on. It'll be interesting to see what he featured, but to come back, and when they were struggling against Galway and Connacht, Galway were kind of becoming that dominant force. But since he's come back in, they really have been defeating Galway with ease, and it deserves massive credit for a manager to come back in that season. And he was analysing Mayo's downfall on Sky Sports as an analyst, and now he's back over them, which is just remarkable, really. But I think the one characteristic with James Horan over Mayo is their aggression in the tackle, and they're just brave. Like, when you look at the Mayo forward line, it's not like, compared to Dublin or Kerry forward line, it's not 6 outstanding forwards. It's just hard working forwards and that quality inside, and it's just hard work all over the pitch. Like, and he deserves massive credit. And I think one thing people are forgetting was Mayo were level with Dublin at the water break in the second half last year. They obviously did struggle in that last quarter, but I think that could be a huge learning curve for them when they do, because they probably have been looking back at the footage a slight bit from last year, and it should be a bit of a learning curve going in. But James Carr is another player. He got a goal against Galway in the qualifiers down in Limerick. I think it was one of the goals of the championship in 2017. He's a real another explosive forward that they could be looking to get that impact for the bench. But I just think the key thing in this game is, what are Mayo going to do when Dublin hold on to 4 or 5 minutes? How are they going to set up? Are they going to rely on Ryan O'Donoghue and Tommy Conroy? Because, like, we see Fitzsimons go forward, we see Davy Byrne go forward, and I just think if they can pass that on and try and stop the inside forwards wasting their energy of doing that, because it's a very hard thing to do when Dublin do hold on to that ball, because we've seen teams running around after Dublin and they've just really been like headless chickens. Like, they haven't been able to get that ball back. Dublin are just such control when they do that. It's a process. They work to score and they work it to that man in the better position.
And just to pick up something Paul said there, and I hadn't thought about it till he was talking there on the 2020 All-Ireland final. I guess Mayo, like, because I've been to Dublin Mayo games and I've been to all the Dublin games against the big counties like Kerry, Donegal, obviously. And there's nothing like when Dublin are playing Mayo in terms of the Mayo fans. Like, Dublin outnumber every single fan base except Mayo when they come up against Mayo. And I guarantee you, somehow, I know there's only 24,000 in there, but the Mayo fans will be shouting off the rooftops. They'll be giving their team a support. And looking back on the last year's All-Ireland final, I think behind closed doors really suited Dublin, because I think Mayo again outnumbered Dublin fans in those big Croke Park games, and also Dublin have experience playing in front of an empty Croke Park or very close to it for all their National League campaigns. So those small 1% that they didn't have against Dublin in the 2020 All-Ireland final, they'll definitely have. It's a plus here, the fact they'll have fans in the stadium. So I don't think that can be underestimated, because I'm liking the Mayo fans to Waterford or Cork hurling fans. I think those 3 set of fans, they bring a different buzz to Croke Park that definitely impacts referees, definitely impacts the players on the pitch, and right up into the kickouts and even the manager and making those substitutions. So that can't be underestimated as well.
Yeah, 100%. And Paul, you were spot on with all that. And I suppose, Daniel, what can Mayo look at for this Saturday? Because we did see, I know people probably lost their heads for the last 10 or 15 minutes of the Meath Dublin game. People thought the world was ending with that Meath fight back, and obviously Kildare didn't really put up much of a challenge. But, you know, what can Mayo even learn maybe from watching them 2 games, and what can Mayo maybe bring to this game on Saturday to try get over the line against their arch nemesis?
Well, that Dublin are definitely not as good as they were in previous seasons, and that's just a fact. And even if they pick it up these last 2 games, they don't have that fear factor anymore. And I think counties could, like, if Meath and Kildare are spotting gaps, and not that I was disappointed with Kildare, like, they put it up and on paper they got a good result, but they didn't even, after Dan Flynn's goal, if they pushed up the kickouts, and they just didn't seem to want to win. I think Jack O'Connor was looking further down the line, I guess. But in terms of what they can learn, is that this Dublin team have been sloppier this year. If you put pressure on the ball, like the Mayo would do typically in an All-Ireland final anyway, that you're going to force those mistakes. And I think Dublin always had those mistakes in them, because I'd always watch the Dubs be at league games and I'd see one bit of sloppiness and go, well, you know what, that's going to cost us at the end of the year. There's a bit more sloppiness in us. Where this year, I think that's just 2 or 3-fold now. I think there's a lot more mistakes in Dublin. They're hitting a lot more wides, the wrong shot selection, and it's not a tap. Like, you can't just say to Dubs, all right lads, we're going to cruise through Leinster here and then we're going to really go for in the All-Ireland semi-finals. You can do that in terms of your fitness and your training regime, but in terms of the sloppiness, I don't think you can kick that out of the team overnight, and that's why I'd fear for the Dubs on Saturday. And if Mayo can force those mistakes and Dublin are as sloppy as they were against Kildare and Meath, then this could be up to a 50-50 game for Mayo. So if they learn anything from Kildare and Meath, it's a simple thing, as that fear factor is gone. Force the mistakes from Dublin. They are human like everyone else, which for years I wasn't sure they were, to be fair. But I think, yeah. And even on that Meath game, it was funny. I was like, I am obviously a massive Dublin fan, but like the Cork, the Munster final was on, or was the Munster semi-final, or whatever was on, I was watching that and kind of keeping half an eye on the Dubs, Meath, and geez, all of a sudden they got it back to within 3 points or 4 points. I was like, geez, imagine Dublin go out now and 99% of the country's not even watching the game on telly. Would have been madness altogether in some way for that run to end. But if Mayo learn anything, it's sloppiness is there absolutely this year.
Yeah, and just on that as well, Daniel, it was fascinating because I think that game was on GA Go, and I think I tweeted saying years ago when the likes of Graham Geraghty, Mossy Quinn and the boys were playing, that was an absolutely fantastic game to watch. Some fall from grace, Daniel, to be just on GA Go.
Yeah, I guess it just shows you, well, they might have got that wrong this year in terms of the Dublin Meath game was actually all right this year, and the Kildare game, it's just the last few years, and Leinster has been just shocking. And now I'll only spend maybe a few seconds on this, lads, but like the Croke Park factor is huge. Like, I'm not saying these teams would beat Dublin in Navan or Newbridge, but why do they not get to play Dublin in Newbridge or Navan? Or it's like Leinster semi-finals in Croke Park hasn't sat well with me for the last few years. I think Dublin, it's as a dub, like I guarantee it, while not every dub would say this, majority of dubs would say it, they love travelling up and down the country. The best part of supporting Dublin all year is away in National League games. So to have 90% of the championship games in Croke Park since Stephen Cluxton's been involved it's just giving an unfair advantage to a team that doesn't need an unfair advantage. And in any other sport, this wouldn't be tolerated. But because the GA and cash talks somehow in an amateur organisation, that the Croke Park is just used for the Dubs all the time. And I think post-pandemic and next year, I think there needs to be a drive home that just Dublin should Leinster final in Croke Park, and I guess all Ireland semi-finals in Croke Park. But I wouldn't say, yeah, I guess so. But everything else should be on the table. I wouldn't even like the Cavan Dublin game. John, I don't know about yourself, but I was driving the drum that this game should be played in Clonus, or that game should be played in Clonus. Again, behind closed doors, there was no excuse for it. Now, I heard the Cavan players wanted to play in Croke Park, and that's fair enough, but again, I wouldn't agree with that kind of statement at all. I don't know what your thoughts were on that, John, but for me as a dub, I know it's an All-Ireland semi-final, but Dublin play there 99% of the time. They've just got such a big advantage playing in Croke Park.
Yeah, no, 100%, and I think a lot of the players are embracing the challenge of Croke Park, and everyone obviously wants to play in Croke Park, but there would have been a lot even to be said for it to be played in Navan, tight, narrow pitch, and I think it was called for during the week off the Dublin Cavan game, but obviously Dublin got over the line, but potentially down in a tighter ground, but obviously Dublin did show their class throughout. But it would be interesting to see if they can be pulled out of Croke Park. Obviously, maybe for them Leinster semi-finals it'd be great, because there's just not a whole pile of need for it. And Paul, I suppose, touching on that there too, obviously the Dublin Meath game being on GA Go, and as I said a couple of weeks ago, that game was just probably the forefront in the Leinster Championship. It was on GA Go, and people had to pay their few pound for it.
Yeah, you couldn't really blame the GA, I suppose, going on the last few games between Dublin and Meath a few years before that, like the Leinster final there in 2020, and the time as well, Meath only scored, I think it was 4 points against Dublin in a Leinster final, so you couldn't blame them. But Meath did come back, and it was a game they missed. But I think as well, league games, Dublin should be playing them in Parnell Park. I don't see why they should be playing them in Croke Park. Like, you can be sure that every Dublin player this weekend knows the surroundings, knows every inch of grass in Croke Park, compared to Mayo, where a lot of them young lads have probably only played there twice in 2 years, and they haven't played there a lot, like for Oisin Mullen and Tommy Connery, Ryan O'Donoghue, these players, they haven't played against Dublin in Croke Park. 24,000 people there, so it definitely is an advantage, but it's not something I like to talk to too much about it, because we've just seen with the GA, they've been so slow to make these changes. Like, we've been banging the drum for Tier 2 championship, Dublin's home advantage, and nothing seems to be working, so I don't think we're going to change it today.
No, Paul,
True.
unfortunately not. And I suppose last few things on it, Paul, as I was saying to Daniel, what can Mayo do this weekend? Like, is it pushing up in the kickouts? Is it utilising the class of Matthew Moran, getting as much ball to the full forward line, getting Aidan O'Shea in the right position? What can Mayo do to get over the line against the mighty Dubs, Paul?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think what Mayo have to do is force the Dublin players to shoot who are comfortable to shoot. It has been interesting when you see Davy Byrne has been taking on shots in the last few games. I think in the league final he caught a mark against Donegal in the league semi-final and he hit it with his weaker foot. And it's just something you don't see, like, for a cornerback to win something like that. Just they kind of have to force them kind of players to shoot, and just I think one big thing for them this weekend is to not dive in, because Oisin Mullen started that All-Ireland final unbelievable last year, and then Conor O'Callaghan within 5 minutes was nearly looking at the man of the match, and it was just he dived in at one sense and Conor O'Callaghan was able to spring that dummy. So I think it's just standing up Dublin, and I've already said it, I think the big one for is them, they're just going to have to be disciplined in Dublin, hold on to that ball, maybe try and do something different that we haven't seen teams do. Let them have the ball, but let them have it further out, and just try and not let Dublin work it into that scoring zone. But I know people are talking about the form, Fenton and Conor O'Callaghan maybe slipping, but like that Leinster final, like, people probably won't say again when was the last time they played so poorly before that. It was probably never. And I expect the individuals, the Fenton and Conor, to come out and just be hungry this weekend, and probably see them put in maybe one of their best performances in the championship. I definitely think there's going to be a kick in Dublin, because I have to realise as well, like, I know Kerry are going well, but it's remarkable when you think Kerry are All-Ireland favourites. Dublin are 6 in a row All-Ireland champions, haven't been beaten yet, and they're still not All-Ireland favourites. It's just going to be a massive task for Mayo, but it's just about kind of hanging in there, and like as Daniel said already, it is going to come down to this last quarter. I could potentially even see extra time in this game, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. And what about yourself, Daniel? What would be kind of the last few thoughts on it? If you're James Horan this week, what are you saying to his Mayo men?
This is a massive opportunity for them, and I think that's got to be driven home by James. And I don't think Mayo have ever gone with fear against the Dubs, so there must have been somewhere in the back of their mind going, geez, are we ever going to beat them? Where I think now they have this massive opportunity, and I kind of agree with Paul in the sense I think this is going to go right to the wire, because I do think Mayo are on this trajectory where they're moving up, and I think Dublin are coming back down to the pack, albeit slowly. Like, I do still think they're obviously one of the best teams in top 2 or 3 in the country. So I can definitely see a potential for an extra time here. Like, in my head, every time I try and see can Mayo win, I just see Dublin getting over the line with a Mayo-esque sort of diving in for the ball, like Paul mentions, or just something a little bit stupid or a little bit inexperienced, where that Dublin experience, they go into that Dublin mode. And so again, something Paul mentioned earlier, the way they keep the ball, what will Mayo do then with 5 minutes to go or whatever. So if they've got a massive opportunity, Mayo, they should mix it up like we mentioned at the top of the show with Aidan O'Shea. I think he holds the key here. If they can get a couple of scores off Aidan O'Shea, either popping the ball, getting fouled, or scoring himself while playing 14, the Mayo fans will just erupt. So I do think that's really important and really crucial to decide where this game goes. But for me, I do see it going all the way to the wire, and a kick of the ball between the teams again. And that kick of the ball this time could go Mayo's way. That little bit of sloppiness, like. One thing I would slightly disagree with Paul, like I think Dublin will definitely improve, but I just can't see a way they just put in this clinical performance or get back to where they were straight away, because like I said, it's not like a tap. You can't just go from not playing well to playing amazing. Maybe I might be proven wrong, like, and in fairness, these players are phenomenal. The Conor O'Callaghan's, the Brian Fentons, the Kieran Kilkenny's, like, they're 3 of the top 5 best players in the country, like, you know. So I don't know, I just, something's off with them this year, and I think it's a massive opportunity with Mayo, and they need to drive that home in the dressing room, that let's go out here, let's start well for once against the Dubs. So, because remember, bar maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, they haven't started well in these games. So if they start well, they have every chance, especially with Aidan O'Shea at 14.
They're getting bored, Daniel. They're getting bored.
Again, well, joking aside, like, honestly, because, well, Fluxon's side, like, that must have been something, maybe a boredom, or I don't know. there must be something up. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know. There's worse reasons anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And I suppose to wrap it up, Paul, what would be your last prediction for the game, and who would be the key player to watch this weekend?
Yeah, like as we've kind of mentioned already, it's going to be a tight game, and I think just maybe them players that we didn't see perform for Dublin in this Leinster final that's played Kildare, I think they're really going to step up this weekend, and I think if Dublin do leave that Paddy Small in reserve, as we mentioned, I think it really could benefit them this weekend. Player I think that's going under the radar for Dublin as well is Sean McMahon. I've been really impressed with him at wing back. He's not the paciest, but like he's going about his job solid, going under the radar. If Merchant starts this weekend, it's key for Dublin. He's just that transition player that can really get them attacks going. Interesting to see where John Small goes this weekend, because he has been that kind of key man maker for Dublin, but Mayo's threat seems to be more inside, so that'll be interesting to see where he lines out. And I just think Dublin in this final quarter could edge it, but it's Mayo. You just don't know with them. They can literally do anything, but I just think Dublin in that final quarter, maybe even an extra time, will just nick this one and just slightly get over the line.
And what about yourself, Daniel, the player to watch this weekend, and your last prediction on it?
No, don't want to be too obvious, but I think Matthew Rowan will excel again, and it'd again be interesting if he does some sort of job on Brian Fent, but also gets on the ball himself as well. For me, returns prediction, I think it's going right to the wire. People there are penalties available now. Like it was mentioned at full time at Cork Kilkenny. Like stranger things, like we're not gonna imagine having a penalty shootout to decide who gets to an All-Ireland final. So I might go out on a limb and say it'll be a draw at full time. It'll go all the way to penalties, and then it'll be heartbreak again for Mayo because Dublin will just have that little bit of extra done in terms of prepping themselves for penalties. So Dublin to win on penalties, I think, is my prediction.
Jesus, there's a good one. I wonder what the odds are on that. I was going to ask you about
I'll throw a euro on it now that I've said it so.
Brilliant stuff. Well, lads, thanks a million for joining me this week. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by orgoretro.com and Atak Sports. Use my promo code JMOC Podcast to get 15% off on orgoretro.com and get the best gloves, skins, and equipment on ataksport.ie. Be attack minded. Paul, Daniel, thanks a million.
Thanks.
No, John.